Candace Owens makes me want to talk about that Tim Dillon video that I agreed to watch at your behest.
Right. Actually, I was going to say something about, and this does actually tie into the Tim Dillon video. When Candace Owens, because Candace Owens is a big, I left the left person, right?
I mean, sort of, but she has very little credibility in ever having been on the left. But yeah, kind of.
Well, she's someone. Well, but she does this thing where, well, I'm not saying she's a former like leftist, but she's someone who. Well, but my point is, when she criticizes the left, quote unquote, and she talks about having left the left, who is she really talking about? She's talking about liberals, right? So
she means a Democrat and a liberal, yeah, a Lib Dem.
Yeah. They're talking.
Hey, Fooly, I wanted to tell you about this acronym I came up with. PILD, PLLD, Progressive Left Liberal Democrat. So PILD just groups all those things, like for ease,
right,
if you ever just want to talk about like all of those people like to the left of Donald Trump, basically.
Right. Yeah. What's colloquially considered the left in terms of people like this. And the thing is,
she just means Democrats. Although it should be noted that there's very little record of her actually being a Democrat. In fact, apparently she wasn't even registered to vote as late as 2016. So what she actually means by having left the left is like pretty much just fake, basically.
Right. And so someone like Candace Owens or someone like Milo, their big thing is to basically point at liberals, and a lot of their criticism is legitimate. A lot of it is reactionary, but a lot of it...
You're going to get shit for that, but for the record, I agree with you.
For what? Saying it's legitimate or that it's reactionary?
Saying that some of their criticism is legitimate, I think is true.
Well, of course they are, because I mean they're not stupid. They're grifters. If there's a legitimate criticism of liberals, then they're going to voice it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, obviously, a lot of the things they come out and say are legit criticism. They're not just going to be talking about, they're not just going to be banging on about racism 24/7, because they want to. Obviously, Candace Owens is a black woman. Milo is a gay man. They want to popularize these ideas with black women, with gay men, groups like that. So they're going to...
I mean, they might want to do that, but just for the record, Candace, there's a fair amount of data into this. Candace Owens's audience is actually not black people leaving the Democratic Party. Her audience is heavily white. I've actually been to Candace Owens events. So there's a disconnect between what she says her audience is and what it actually is. Like, Candace Owens' job is to go on Fox News and say like legitimately fucked up shit that a white person couldn't get away with. Like black Democrats are on the Democrat plantation, which is a totally fucked up thing to say.
Right. But she gets paid because the people who are paying her believe that she's doing that.
I think that's debatable. Also, honestly, like, do people actually think that she's recruiting or helping black people into the Democratic tent? I mean, I think that the people paying Candace know who her audience is and who she's speaking to. But it just makes sense to have someone who your audience loves and can sell books and can, get appearances and eyeballs. So I just think it makes sense to have someone like that. And again, it's useful to have someone who can get away with the thing that Tucker Carlson would not get away with. Right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but their point is to criticize liberals and say, because this is all going back to me saying that Robin DiAngelo is more of a problem, because obviously we know how to deal with someone like Milo. Is, as you said to Justin, you just distance yourself from liberals, right? Because if all they're going to point to is like...
That wasn't exactly my advice to Justin, but okay, I get what you're saying.
Well, Robin DiAngelo, who is a liberal, right? Distance yourself and the things that they're saying.
What I told Justin is that Milo is going to use Robin DiAngelo as a mascot, right, of everything bad on the left. So if you beat him to that, then you'll disarm him. And that is, in fact, what happened. Milo didn't really know where to go once that happened.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. Maybe it's not the case that they're more of a problem, but people like Milo are certainly easier for us to deal with than Robin DiAngelo. To deal with, at least.
That might be true, but like I can kind of see the case for like Robin DiAngelo versus Candace, but make the case for like Rational Disconnect against Candace Owens. Like Rational Disconnect is a pretty marginal guy on Twitch, and I don't know. I think he's mostly like pretty. He mostly just like dunks on right wingers. I don't see like his point that he made against Angie Speaks when you brought up that thread about the Birmingham jail tweet. His objection to her seemed fine to me. Even if you disagree with it, I don't see how it's in any way comparable to anything to what Robin DiAngelo does.
Well, all he said was something about.
I don't get your axe to grind with Rational Disconnect.
It's mainly about his approach, and it's not just him. Obviously, I'm sort of using him as an avatar of the kind of person who's like, because like the clip I posted where he's like. His mentality is, I'm doing this for other people. This is a selfless thing I'm doing, and this is not just.
What's the clip you posted?
Where he's talking about
how you throw it in the chat, and I'll take a look at it.
He's listing off like that he's a white cisgender guy, and he'd be fine under Trump. I'm doing this.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, I'm doing this because of other people, and it's like. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with that at all. I think if you're working class, regardless of your identity, it is entirely within your interest, and that should be the motivating factor. It shouldn't motivating factor for leftism shouldn't be, oh, I'm doing this for other people. Motivating factor should be, this makes my life better and it makes everyone else's life better.
But isn't a core principle of leftism like solidarity? Like if Trump's policies are, for instance, targeting immigrants, and you're not an immigrant, shouldn't we as leftists stand in solidarity with immigrants?
Of course, but what I'm saying
so then I don't get your problem with him saying that. Then
no, the problem is that he's acting like this is a sacrifice he's making by being on the left.
Is it this video where you're like, this you? Is it this one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, it's 50 seconds long. Just let me watch it real quick.
Again, like I'll say this at the beginning. Right now, Bernie or bust doesn't fucking affect me at all, right? Okay, I am a white, cis, straight guy who has a 401k. It screws me a little bit because I'm going back to school, right? But I'll be fucking fine, okay?
So he says Bernie or bust doesn't affect him, but he's against it because of other people.
Right? I'm not getting fucked by anything.
Right.
Donald Trump has not done any. If anything, Donald Trump.
And what I'm saying is a lot of, not just him. I'm not just singling out him. I'm just using him as like an avatar of this kind of approach. It's like
under Trump personally.
It's like a. I don't. What I'm saying is I don't agree with it as being like a big selfless thing that you're doing it to, because I think that justifies.
I'm not sure that was his point either, though. I think he's just saying that that it would be easy for him to be Bernie or bust, but it would be forgetting like other people, like trans people and like the military ban or something like that. Like you might think that's dumb because you don't think you should join the military, but we shouldn't have discriminatory laws. That's the point.
Well, I mean, but that's sort of him saying that the only people who are Bernie or bust are people who are white guys who don't care about the thing of minorities, when that's not the case.
He didn't exactly say that, though.
There was another clip where he was like basically talking about, I didn't post it on this time, but he's talking about he doesn't understand why you would be a minority and Bernie or bust.
I saw that clip, yeah.
Yeah.
We argued about that clip because you claimed that RD was saying that he didn't talk to Black people and non-white people. He didn't say that. He said that he didn't understand the perspective.
Right, but I mean...
That's just his opinion. I mean, I don't know. He doesn't have to agree with people just because a Black person said it.
No, of course not, but I mean... Well, he's sort of saying both at the same time. He's sort of saying, my opinions don't matter because I'm a white guy. My interest doesn't matter because I'm a white guy. I care about, the interests of, like...
He didn't say that white people didn't matter, though.
No. He's specifically saying...
It seems like you're reading it very uncharitably.
he's saying what he's saying is my perspective on this doesn't matter because.
See, I don't perceive it that way. Like I perceive what he was saying is that we should be in solidarity with other people who are, more marginalized, not that, it doesn't matter what I think as a white person. So I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying that by phrasing it this way, he's phrasing the left as something that doesn't intrinsically appeal to, for instance, white people.
Sort of, to an extent. I think
he should make a universal appeal for the left, not a race-based appeal.
Well, I don't think it's a race-based appeal. I think it's an appeal to people who like to. It's appeal to. I mean, the whole point of like that side of breadtube, quote unquote, is to try and push liberals left. And they're going to do that by going, oh well, we're so.
I think that's debatable, by the way.
What do you mean?
I think it's debatable. That's the point of breadtube. I think that I think you could ask any left-wing content creator on YouTube, and they would have different ideas about what the point of their channel is.
I mean, no, that side of breadtube that I was speaking about earlier, the people who try to make allegiances with liberals, right? So people like Rational Disconnect, people like Vash.
I think Rational Disconnect might just be a liberal, though. I'm not sure if he identifies that way. Or I actually have watched very little of his content.
He's a sock dem.
Is sock dem, is that like liberalism? I would say technically it's neither, because it's what social democracy is, a mixed economy. But I mean, I would say that's probably like a liberal position, I suppose. I don't think liberalism is a bad word.
Depends on the person, because
yeah, it does. It depends on the person. You heard it here, folks. Fully, depends on the child.
No. Oh god. No.
I'm gonna clip that.
No, I mean it depends if you're saying, because like ContraPoints and Shoe on Head will both identify as sock dems because they think that's the most they can achieve. I'm fine with that. If you're a sock dem,
I don't know if that's their reason, to be honest.
They've both said that. I mean, that's what they've said.
Wait, they both said that the reason for being sock dem is because they think that's the most they can achieve.
Yeah, and they've both said that on Vash's stream.
Okay, I'll check that out.
So obviously, you have that type of person, the type of person who wants the socially democratic reforms, and like that's the furthest they'll go. They won't be comfortable with anything further left than that. And I'm not saying if Rational Disconnect is either one of those. I don't really know.
That's the thing, because you open this by saying that it's not necessarily about him. Then why do you frame it as about him? Like why do you frame it as like, taking his clips and replying to him and dunking on him? Like, why not just make the point generally if it's not about him?
Because I'm sort of doing what they do, and I shouldn't do this, and I should do this a lot less. But I'm sort of doing what they do in the sense that I'm taking them and using them as an avatar of the thing I don't like, which is what they absolutely do with, Angie and Beta.
Like Candace Owens and people like that.
Well, not even with Candace Owens, with...
My perception of RT is that he spends a lot more time going after the right than he does Peter Coffin and Angie Speaks. That's my perception of him.
Well, I'm not saying he does go after Angie Speaks and Peter Coffin more than the right.
Okay. And I also think that when he has a problem with them, I think it is specific to them. I think that he, like, the things I've seen is him taking issues that are specific to Peter and Ashley, or sorry, not Ashley, Angie. We stan Ashley Coffin in this podcast. If he has any clips going after Ashley Coffin, God damn it, I will end him. This is my promise to you, RD.
Yeah, she could end him. She's got like.
Don't even think about it.
Yeah. She could start Twitch or something.
Does she not have Twitch? I don't know. I don't watch Twitch streams, so
I don't even know if she does the podcast anymore. I think she just does posts, which is joining my side.
That's what you should do.
Yeah, just doing posts.
I clap. Yeah. Just do posts, man. No reason for anything else. Just do posts.
Yeah.
All right, man. I do want to get to this fucking hour-long Candace Owens interview you made me watch, since you made me watch it. Let's set up, like, how did it come to this is my question. How did we end up watching this?
I'll be honest, I haven't watched it because I was busy yesterday. I was planning to watch it.
Oh my God. I can't fucking, I knew this was going to happen. I was watching it. I was like, I bet Fooly's not even going to have watched this. God damn it. So it's a Tim Dillon interview with Candace Owens.
Right. I suppose I'm going to need you to explain it to me.
Okay. Now, I only learned who Tim Dillon was a few weeks ago because I saw a picture of him online. He was on a Joe Rogan episode with Alex Jones, and in this picture, he's wearing a T-shirt that says "Free Ghislaine Maxwell," and I'm like, who is this dude? And that was my introduction to Tim Dillon. Now, I don't know his comedy, I don't know it, but so what's that guy's name? Vic Berger dunked on him for his interview with Jones, right? Okay, and then you dunked on Vic Berger, and then I dunked on you. And now you're on my podcast. And now we're throwing it out on the podcast the way men do.
Yeah, exactly. That's how. Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to say something about Vic Berger. Vic Berger is on my do not retweet list because I think he is not always an honest guy. I know for a fact that he has put forward audio and video of Cernovich, who is a scumbag and a liar, but he has put forward video and audio of him that was dishonestly edited, and I have a big problem with that. So he even when I agree with him, he is on my do not retweet list.
Well, it just looks us. It just makes us look bad when you lie about that, because then it just reinforces that.
It absolutely does.
Yeah, then they're just going to go, well, they lie about us. They lie, but yeah.
And also, I mean, it just gives, like, if you have to make stuff up, then there must not be anything legitimate. And I mean, not being able to hit a target as broad as Mike Cernovich, I don't know what the fuck's going on there, because you should be able to hit that dude.
Right, yeah.
He's not a slippery guy. He's not a clever guy.
He's not a guy that's where it's like, you don't have to lie about Mike Cernovich. He's got enough
you
dirt
absolutely
on him
do not.
As it is. But so Tim Dillon, I know who Tim Dillon is from Come Down. He's one of those guys. He's a comedian. He does stand up, and he's one of these guys who does a podcast to sort of promote his stand up career, because that's what you're supposed to do these days.
Now, he opened the this podcast interview with Candace Owens by saying, I don't really have guests on my show, but I wanted to have Candace on, which already is, like, in my opinion, kind of a bad start.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like, I just found Candace Owens' message to be so important that I had to have her on the podcast in an episode that is, if you had only seen this episode, you wouldn't think like, oh, Tim Dillon, the comedian, because it's not a comedy episode. It's just a straightforward interview with Candace Owens.
That is a big problem that I had with the Vic Berger tweet, is because he's sort of like divorcing the context of this guy's a comedian, this guy does a podcast to promote his comedy. Well, he did point out, but he's not. This isn't a kind of thing that he does regularly. He doesn't have like Mike Cernovich on. He doesn't have. I think he specifically brought Candace Owens on because somebody told me this, so I don't know if it's true or not. But she's someone who comes up on his. She gets brought up on his show a lot.
Okay. The fact that he doesn't do politics that much, like, I don't see how that's relevant, because the point is he's doing it here in this podcast that Vic is criticizing. Right. Like, I found myself agreeing with the point that Vic made, just to spoiler. Because his criticism of it is that Tim has her on and just lets her spread outrageous lies about, for instance, COVID. At one point, she says that doctors are taking people who died of cancer and passing them off as having died of COVID. And Tim doesn't push back at all. He just sits there nodding.
And our infection rates, first they were playing around with the death rates, and we had the censorship from the tech. People were coming out and saying, yes, my father died of cancer and COVID-19 is on his death certificate, because in post-mortem.
That's a pretty outrageous thing to just let someone spew on your podcast, in my opinion.
I mean, that's true. But what I have more of a problem with is going after people who aren't really like politics people in that manner, and basically trying to...
Isn't Tim going into politics here? I mean, this is just an interview with a political figure about politics.
Right, but he's not responsible for what his audience takes away from that. I mean, you can criticize him.
What his audience takes away from it. I'm criticizing what Candace Owens said on his podcast while he nodded along. I'm not criticizing his audience.
No, but what I'm saying is that it's not really. I mean, his audience can like think for themselves. It's not a case
it sound like an accident.
It's not like an.
Message away. Candace Owens said this on his podcast and there was or anything.
Right, but for someone who isn't already believing the things Candace Owens says, comedy podcast, you're just going to think, because people make the same argument about Joe Rogan, right? It sort of ties in with the same thing. Maybe he has someone on, and maybe Joe Rogan's audience aren't stupid people. They can think for themselves.
Well, you absolutely have stupid people in your audience.
Well, of course. But
I think what you said right there is a cop-out, because you're saying, well, unless you can point to me the people who came away from this podcast who believing Candace Owens lies, then you can't blame Tim for having her on to spout lies. And my point is, it's not responsible to just invite people on your podcast to spread lies. That's my point.
You can make the argument that he's irresponsible, and I would agree with that, but he's obviously not someone who's like as invested in politics as we are, because we wouldn't do that, obviously. Obviously, we wouldn't do that. Obviously, Vic Berger wouldn't do that.
I don't know Tim, so I don't know how invested he is in politics, but he's obviously someone who like thinks about politics, and also he's someone who's using his podcast there to have a political figure on to talk about politics. So if he's going to do that, I think that there's just a bare minimum of not letting people just lie. And if you do, then you deserve criticism for it, which is what Vic did. He criticized him for letting people lie on his podcast.
Cool. You can call him irresponsible, absolutely, but I think what I object to...
Did Vic say more than that, though?
I think he was like trying to make out that he was like trying to grift and stuff.
I mean, grift is just I think people overuse the word grift. Yeah. I don't know if he used it, but like...
I'll check.
The difference between grifting and lying doesn't seem to me to be huge. So, and to be honest, this doesn't hinge on the use of the word grift, in my opinion.
But yeah, sort of my point is that I think a lot of people in situations like this present people who are ultimately just like, I want to say dumb, but aren't very like, are probably like at best irresponsible, ignorant, and...
If you agree that it's irresponsible and ignorant, I don't get having a problem with Vic's criticism, though. And I say this as a guy who doesn't come in as a defender of Vic Berger. I have some big problems with Vic Berger, but it just seems to me on this point, he's just right.
All right, what he said was, and agreed with her dangerous lies of the pandemic. I mean, you can criticize him for being irresponsible and not pushing back, but not pushing back is the same as agreeing.
But he nodded and said stuff like, "Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, oh okay." So I think he did agree with it. Did you see Tim responded to Vic by saying like, "Hey buddy, at the beginning of it, I said I don't know if I agree with what you're saying, but." And in his mind, because he said that like a minute or two before her 5-minute rant of lies, that absolves him of responsibility. And that's just like the weakest possible answer I can imagine. Like, oh, at one point, a different point in the podcast, I said that I'm not sure I agree with you. So therefore, you can't hold me accountable for what happens on my own podcast. How dare you, sir? Like, that's some Dave Rubin bullshit right there. If you want to trigger me, act like Dave Rubin, man. I get pretty triggered.
Right. But my point sort of is that I don't think Tim Dillon is... I mean, you can say he acts like Dave Rubin, but I don't think Tim Dillon is acting in the same way. I mean, he's not grifting like Dave Rubin is. Dave Rubin is obviously a grifter. He's obviously hyper aware of the things that he's saying. He's obviously... he obviously has an agenda.
Hyper-aware is not a term that has been used to describe Dave Rubin ever before.
Right. I mean, he's saying things to further an agenda. I don't think Tim Dillon has an agenda, and I think what this kind of thing, what I have a problem with, is people trying to make out like people who generally don't have any agendas and are generally just like ignorant, apolitical people out to be, sinister, people are trying to.
So first of all, the idea that he doesn't have a gender, he doesn't have a gender. No, the idea that he doesn't have an agenda just seems like a guess on your part. And as for being apolitical, if you listen to this, I'm actually disappointed you hadn't listened to it because there's some kind of interesting stuff to talk about later on.
Right.
he actually does express his political opinions. And later on in the podcast, there's actually a point in the podcast where he granted does a bad job, but he actually pushes back about redlining. He didn't do a very good job, but at least he had heard of it. He knew what it was. He tried to explain it to Candace and explain why he didn't agree with her. They also had an interesting disagreement about drug legalization, where at one point Candace Owens says that the Democrats are bad because of a decriminalization bill in Oregon and a proposed one in California, decriminalizing small amounts of like cocaine and methamphetamines. And Candace Owens is like tearing this apart, and Tim Dillon is saying, well, I actually agree with it because X, Y, and Z. And then her response to that is, well, it's okay to decriminalize drugs, I guess, which is like, what do you think decriminalizing is? The bill that you're vilifying a second ago is a decriminalization bill. You don't even know what you're talking about. So I actually think he did a decent job in the remainder of the episode. I thought he came off as like, oh, he's like a thoughtful guy who has some politics. He's obviously, I would describe him as like a moderate Republican, probably. Like where I live in the Northeast, there's a lot of Republicans, but they're and there's not a ton, but there are Republicans. They're usually pretty moderate to left on like abortion, gays, drugs. And I identified him as like in that spectrum. He also made it clear he's pro-choice in this. So like he didn't just agree with her. He does have politics. He does have ideology. He talked about people who've like influenced his thinking, which included Ben Shapiro, by the way. But when she's on, and I kind of think he might have been like caught off guard, because she at one point just goes on this tear for 5 straight minutes, just spewing lie after lie about COVID. And I think he might have just not been ready for it, which I can understand that, but you deserve criticism for it.
Fair point. I think it's criticism. I think that's fair if it's criticism where it's not trying to vilify the guy, because I think what I really have a problem with is trying to vilify a guy who, I mean, from at least my perspective, I could be wrong on this, is a guy who's just getting paid to do comedy. I don't think this guy is like getting paid off by the Koch brothers or whatever. I think he's trying to, further his comedy career. And
so I can sort of get behind the call to not vilify others, but the problem is, as someone who listened to this episode, it was filled with not just Candace at many points, Tim vilifying the left. This is mostly Candace vilifying trans people, gay people. She at one point she said it was a mistake to support gay rights because it resulted in a slippery slope of trans rights. And Tim's response is to nod and say, well, that makes sense, which it doesn't make sense because the slippery slope is a fallacy. You can't argue against something because it might have a bad result. You have to argue anything might have a bad result. You have to argue against the merits of it. But on top of that, it not only vilifies trans people, but throws all gay people under the bus to do it. And Tim's response is just to nod and say that makes sense. So I agree, vilifying people oftentimes is misguided, but there was a ton of vilification of people on this episode. Was he sincere about that part? Because I don't think he would be sincere. Well, it would have been helpful if you had watched it fully, but what he said.
A couple of years ago, it was all about just gay marriage. Right. I mean, the second the Supreme Court passed gay marriage, we were on trans rights, and it's been shoved down our throat. And now we're at kids picking their gender, and bathroom signs need to be all inclusive, and men need tampons in their restroom. So, I mean, I don't know where I stand on it completely, because I understand.
But isn't there a little bit of a, listen, the slippery slope argument certainly makes a lot of sense.
He didn't agree with what she said about gay and trans people, but he said her use of the slippery slope was a valid point. And it was not, and I would say it qualified as hateful. Now, I'd have to go back and watch it, but I think in the beginning they made some really crude jokes about like gender and stuff. Like there was a lot of vilifying of people on this podcast.
Right. But my point about I don't think he was like 100% sincere about that makes sense. I think he was like, I mean, I haven't seen it, but I think
I have watched it and you haven't, so you're at a disadvantage. Right.
Yeah, but the thing is, I know that Tim's gay.
This is why you watch the segment.
Yeah, but I know that
Tim, okay.
Yeah, he's gay.
So I didn't know that. I did not know that.
So but the thing is,
Like you can be gay and do a terrible job advocating for your own rights, like we've seen people do over and over again. I mean, look at Milo. Milo's gay too. Look at Dave Rubin. All these people are gay and they're complete bootlickers who will throw their own rights under the bus at the drop of a hat from a nice wink from Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck.
Right, but I don't think I don't think Tim is like those guys. I think he's like a mostly ignorant comedian.
Wow, you really don't think much of this guy. You really think he's like an ignoramus. As someone who listened to him actually talk about politics, I don't think he is an ignoramus. I think that I don't think he always did a great job advocating for them on the spot, but I think that he's clearly thoughtful on these issues. He's obviously not an expert, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He clearly has political thoughts.
What I mean by that is that he's not someone who's like, he doesn't subscribe to a particular way of thinking. He's a guy who just like,
he doesn't subscribe to Cumtown. He's not like us where he gets his news from, I guess he does get his news from Cumtown though, since he's been on.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
did they read headlines on that episode of Cumtown?
I don't remember. I think he's been on a couple of times, but I mean, that's where I know him from. But I assume he's like sort of within that, sphere of guys who associate with like Nick and them.
So you're making assumptions about his outlook based on a handful of appearances on Cumtown, but it's not like Cumtown is like, that's not an ideological podcast. They don't like give them just like an ideological test to come on. I don't think that you can assume much about him based on just being on Cumtown, even though Nick Mullen is the president of the DSA.
Of course. Yeah. But no, what I'm saying is I don't think he's like a professional Republican or whatever. Like, I don't think he's getting paid to push an agenda. I think these people are everywhere. He's one of these people who, from my perspective at least, just gets their opinions from all different sources and sort of like assembles. It's like builds your own ideology from like.
Well, but some of these people are Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. It seems like he's listening more to that end currently than he is listening to like sound socialist philosophers like Adam Friedland and Stavros.
Yeah, of course. But the thing is, he's not going to be doing that if all he's getting from, if you consider Vic Berger a leftist, I don't know his politics that well, but he's gonna listen to Candace Owens and that more if what he's getting from the opposite end of the spectrum is, this guy's trying to push far right ideology onto his audience.
I actually think that's people make claims like this a lot, and I don't know how much there is to back them up. I don't know if the process through which we change our mind is actually kind of mysterious, and I think it just makes sense to look at, is the criticism fair? And if it is, then I mean, don't make fair criticism of people because we need to kiss their ass to win them over to leftism. That to me is not a winning strategy. I think that some people put too much emphasis on kissing people's ass, to be honest.
I don't think that's what I'm really saying. It's more of a thing where it's like, don't alienate people by assuming the worst of them.
People have made, I'm sorry to put this back again, but people have made this argument against Dave Rubin and claimed that we pushed Dave Rubin to the left by not kissing, to the right by not kissing his ass enough. And I'm sorry, that's just complete horseshit.
But Dave Rubin is different because he wasn't just a guy. He was someone who worked for, I think it was the Young Turks. And obviously he realized that he'd get more money by leaving the Young Turks and going to wherever he is now.
Okay. I mean, I suppose that's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. I just think that either people's criticism is valid or it's not. And to put more thought in it behind that, to me, is sort of misguided.
But the thing is, though, when the reason Dave Rubin says that, even though it didn't actually happen to him, is because there are people who that has happened to. They've felt alienated from the left because...
Wait, says what?
Says
that
things
he left
about
the left because people were mean to him?
Yeah. Well, he says that. I don't think that's true, but he says
it's
that.
Not, actually, I can make a really strong case that they were really nice to him at TYT. In fact, if you go into Rubin's archives on his channel, his videos go back to his time at TYT. They let him keep his entire archive of material, which still gets hits today. So he's making money money off his content at TYT.
Yeah.
Jank, and I know that I read somewhere that Jank let him do that. Like he agreed to let him do it. He didn't have to do it. He was being nice to him by letting him do that. So they treated him very well at TYT actually.
But yeah, my point is when he says that, what he's doing is appealing to people who that has happened to, that they've felt like alienated. So when they see him say that,
who, like people like that, people like who?
Well, I don't know anyone specific, but people who have sort of felt like they've been sort of like vilified and demonized because of, I don't know.
So my thoughts on this are kind of complicated, because I do think that the left engages in an abrasive culture that is self-defeating, but I struggle with it because I'm worried that if you phrase it the wrong way, what it comes out like is we made this person become a reactionary, and that I just reject that framing outright, because if you are a reactionary, the person who is responsible is you. You're responsible for what you believe, and people being mean to you doesn't force you to believe anything. But I do think that we sometimes make a sort of an inhospitable environment on the left through an overemphasis of things like buzzword. I'm going to use an internet word here: accountability. I think the left preoccupation with accountability is creepy and weird, and guys who are into it are creeps. And I think that it's resulted in a toxic environment in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that stuff makes people reactionaries. Obviously, I mean, as I said earlier, I was turned off by this like 5 years ago. I wouldn't call myself leftist or anything like that, but I was. I mean, I never became a reactionary or anything. I was like a quote unquote centrist. Okay.
So 2015. Tell me about Fooly Cooly 2015. What was going on?
At that point, I was someone who like supported Bernie and Corbyn, but then called myself a centrist because I didn't like what I thought was the radical left at the time. So I didn't really like engage with like left wing politics. I was just like, oh, that'd be cool if these two guys were doing things.
I think that a lot of the support, at least for Bernie, I don't know if this was a factor in Corbyn, but I think a lot of like the support for Bernie came from people who just didn't like Hillary. Was that the case for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. But then
I think that like people like Shoe on Head and Chris Reagan at that point, I'm not speaking for them now, but in like circa 2015, I think that the appeal was really, oh, well, he's running against Hillary. She's terrible, which is correct. She is terrible. So we're Bernie bros now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a way where the pipeline is in our favor. Like like Bernie, I think operated as like a decent centrist to leftist pipeline. Like you come for like, oh, he's against Hillary. Hillary hates him. He must be cool. And then you find out actually Bernie really is cool. He's got good policies. He's right on foreign policy, on healthcare, on his critiques of the Democratic Party. So I think that's an example of like the pipeline being in our favor.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and were you like pro Gamergate at this time? I was trying to get a feeling of like 2015 Fooly. Were you watching a lot of Sargon of Akkad?
See, I never called myself Gamergate, but other people called me Gamergate.
Oh, okay, all right. So were you reposting Gamergate contents?
Depends on what you mean. I was someone who.
Fooly, how many harassment mobs did you participate in?
Oh, all of them from the beginning.
How many dick pics did you send to WOC journalists, Fooly?
I haven't sent any dick pics, but I do remember this was quite recently when someone.
This is the beginning of every good story.
Someone who writes for Kotaku, no, not Kotaku, it was Waypoint at Kotaku, had a complete meltdown about me over something that happened like a month prior.
Okay.
This happened this year.
Do you not want to say this person's name?
I don't think we should, but what I'll say is what it was was...
Wait, tell me and I'll edit it out, okay?
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna send it.
I'll type it in.
Okay, all right, I see it. Okay, I've never heard of this person, by the way. Spilling some tea here. Okay, all right.
I don't know how many people. I think somebody has mentioned it on Twitter recently. Won't say who.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
This person had posted a what was it? thread. No, it was a Vice article where it was like, "Oh, we live in the cool zone now," and somebody else had coined that phrase on Twitter, and they were like, "This is weird. Why are you making a whole post about my why is Vice making a whole article about this tweet I did?" And this woman had a complete meltdown and was like, "This white Bernie bro is trying to attack me because I made an article." And he never really mentioned her name. He just said, "Why is Vice running this article about me without asking me?" And then a month later went by, and she quoted my tweet from a month ago, and was like, "Hey, remember when this happened?" And I was like, I just completely forgot about it. And this, yeah.
We're all living in a cool zone now. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay. I know this account. Okay.
Yeah.
The one
that
she's talking about. Okay. This might be a little. This might be too online for the Logic Guy After Dark podcast. My audience might be too normie for this niche topic here. Cool. I'll read this article. Okay.
You have to know who the guy with the Azumanga Daioh avatar is. Trying to explain some of this stuff to people who are like offline would be completely impossible.
Yes, I mean that's every episode of Logic After Dark, but this might even be a little too much for us here.
Yeah.
All right, so you didn't even watch the dang interview with Tim Dillon. I had to watch the whole thing. It's too bad because we could have talked about amazing parts where Candace Owens doesn't know what the slippery slope fallacy is, and also doesn't know what decriminalization is. So that's a downer. You want to talk about this other video you wanted to watch?
Oh yeah, Xander Hole's.
Yeah.
What was it? Socialism won't solve racism thing.
You said you had a lot to say about this.
Yeah. So
that was 2 days ago. You've forgotten about it.
I'm working I'm too invested in an online that I've adopted the 48-hour cycle, and the 48-hour cycle is thing happens, people get outraged for 48 hours, and then they completely forget about it. Except for some
I'm in the 48-hour spiral as well.
Yeah. So this is a video where he.
Wait, who is this? Who is this bread tuber in question? Say his name.
Xander Hole, formerly known as Pig Puncher.
So I want to get in a thing about Xander Hall, formerly known as Pig Puncher. I have been one to defend quote unquote BreadTube because I think having a leftist presence on YouTube is important. Xander Hall challenges that conviction because what I've seen of Xander Hall, which hasn't been much, I do not know that I encourage this person to put out leftist content on YouTube. To be honest, maybe it should be a little bit more of an exclusive club. To be honest.
Why is that?
Well, for one thing, the thing that made me kind of look into him recently was when I was feuding with Dusty Smith, because Dusty Smith is a coward and a liar. He ended up debating Xander Hall, and I listened to it. And like, if this is what Xander Hall is doing for debates, then like this is just a fucking joke. Because he sat there and just read arguments and receipts from his chat that they were throwing at him and called this a debate. Like, buddy. That's not how you do that, buddy. And the whole thing was just stupid anyways. It was the debate was defending Shuan Head's honor, which is not a debate. That's internet blood sports. Just call it what it is.
Yeah.
So they did this for like 2 hours. It was completely moronic. Somehow Xander got owned by Dusty Smith, who is just a complete Nimrod, like literally a mouth breather.
If you go ahead and put in your place by Dusty Smith.
It was just two idiots. Absolutely. This dude stormed into my DMs demanding I debate him on his stream on Monday. And when I showed up to debate him on Monday, he claimed he didn't know what I was talking about. He asked me to reach out to him on Discord on Friday. And when I did it, and then I was like, hey, Dusty, did you see my message on Discord? He was like, dude, I don't really use Discord. I don't have it installed. What was it? Like, dude, why are you asking me to Discord you if you don't have it installed? What the fuck is the matter with you? So, and then he did it twice. He challenged me to a debate and chickened out twice. So that dude is a fucking scoundrel. That dude is a liar and a coward. And then the other thing I watched from Xander Hall was his again, I hesitate to use this word, but debate with Destiny. about being friends with Vaush. People sent this to me and were like, "Oh, you should watch this." And I was like, "I don't really care about this." I ended up watching the whole thing. It was such a fascinating car wreck to me. Watching this dude desperately plead with his internet friends not to break up. That was a real wake up call for me, I have to be honest.
Yeah. So the thing about Xander Hall, I'll say before going into the actual video, but yeah, Xander Hall did a thing recently where he tried to, in his words, infiltrate the YouTube commentary community.
I remember him talking about this, yes. the YouTube drama community.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think it's the opposite way around.
Yes.
I think that what's happened is the YouTube drama community has invaded, or at least the practices of the YouTube drama community has invaded left-wing YouTube. And that's what Xander Hall is. He's a guy who...
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, he operates in...
But who mistakes his drama posting for politics, which is a mistake people seem to be making a lot these days.
Yeah,
I completely agree. And I'll say this. I actually think that the principle, I suppose, could be sound. I think that, drama gets a lot of clicks online. And so if you want to use that as a way to sell theory and ideology, then I think that's great. But Xander doesn't have any of that. He doesn't know anything.
No, he's like
he's probably the worst person to sell that.
Well, he's a guy who got he became, in his words, alt-right because of Minecraft. That's his backstory. He became friends with a alt-right Minecraft clan, so he's obviously very impressionable and doesn't really.
Which is normal for a young guy, because he would have been 17 at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't hold that against him too much.
But going straight out of that into, oh, I'm a former Nazi. He's doing the thing. And he's talked about this, how it makes him popular is that he's a former, quote unquote chud that's now doing videos for the left, and that's sort of his appeal, I guess.
Yeah, which makes sense. That's always a winning marketing hook.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves a what's the word? Everyone loves a heretic.
Yeah.
If it's a heretic for your side.
Exactly. So in this video, he starts off by talking about Peter Coffin for some reason, and then he's going to debunk Peter Coffin's whole thing of quote-unquote class reductionism by showing us a video that came out a while back where it's like the US's most racist town. There's a guy holding up a sign.
It came out in June. Right. So it was about 5 months old, probably. Yeah. Right.
So yeah, he's using this 5-month-old video to debunk Peter Coffin.
Now, I watched the whole thing. It was like a half hour long. I mean, to me, there wasn't much to latch onto. I don't see much to really disagree with, because what he's saying at the beginning, maybe I interpret it differently than you, but what he's saying at the beginning is what's going on in like huge swaths of America. Like, you think that like they are very conservative and they're not open to like a left-wing view. And I think that that's basically correct. I mean, he's looking at this. I mean, I don't know who his audience is. I hope they're very young, mm-hmm. or actually, do I hope that? Anyways, presumably they're very young, so they might not really realize what's going on in like small town America. But I can tell you that I'm in like a very like a blue Democrat place, mm-hmm. and like if you talk to like people who are more Republican or whatnot, the things they tell you are not like, oh yeah, I have economic anxiety and I want like good unions. Right. Stuff. They very frequently do, in fact, say racist things. And I think some people probably are in denial about that. And so I can't really disagree with what Xander's saying on the face of it here. Right. I didn't think it was a very good video. Like, I don't know who the fuck watches this stuff, but I hated every second of it. But I just don't necessarily disagree with his point there.
Well, the point he's trying to make is in opposition to Peter Coffin. So what he's saying, oh, like the audience doesn't understand, but he's trying to like debunk Peter Coffin by saying, these small towns are too racist, and he's trying to make the point. And the title of the video is "Socialism Won't Stop Racism," and then he's
I'm sorry, I just had a flashback for a second. I want to return to this, but I just remember there's a part of the video where he talks about this movie Antebellum and how good the movie Antebellum is. And from how he's talking, it sounds like he didn't even watch it. He watched a video from Found Flicks on YouTube about it. now he's recommending the movie as really good, and it gave me like a vision of like an apocalyptic Zoomer future where this is how people watch movies now. They watch YouTube videos giving away the plot points and explaining the ending, and telling you what the continuity errors in them are. Jesus fuck, that is the part that like had me just like my forehead hit the table during that part of the video.
Yeah, I mean, being aware of watching Xander Hall's videos makes me think, you know, Vosh is quite smart by comparison. I'm not saying Vosh is dumb, but people call Vosh dumb. They haven't seen Xander Hall.
Did you get that impression too, that he hadn't even? I couldn't tell. It wasn't entirely clear, but it sounded like he didn't watch the movie. It sounded like he watched a YouTube video about the movie. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? And then he's giving away. Sorry to go off on a tangent about this, but like I'm triggered. He's giving away spoilers, and he's like, "Oh, guys, this movie came out years ago. So if you don't know the spoilers, then fuck you." And the movie came out 2 months ago. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. That's a pet peeve of mine. People who just give out spoilers and then when you like, "Hey, buddy," they're mad at you. Like, oh, it's your fault that I give out spoilers. Jesus, just a little bit of consideration, dude. I don't even care. I don't want to watch this movie. I'm just saying be considerate of others. Jesus Christ. Xander Hall, bad movie reviewer. That's my main criticism with him.
I mean, I don't remember that part of it, but yeah.
Oh, it's the only thing I can remember now. The rest of the video is just a red veil in this part of it. Anyways, he said something that I think I disagree. I know I disagree, but I think that you agree. I think we're on different sides of this. He was talking about how, like, there's racism in America, and socialism won't fix racism, so we need to fix racism first. When people say that, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I don't know what fix racism means, to be honest. Yeah. Like, that's a thing that, like, Hillary Clinton famously said, and it just seemed to me to obviously be, like, code for, we can't do anything economic, let's focus on, like, diversity training. Like, this is just, like, I call this, like, white fragility Democrats. This is white fragility Democrats at work.
Right. I mean, my interpretation of that is we cannot organize a left at the moment. All we can do is make alliances with, you know, liberal institutions, liberal progressives to sort of force people to stop being racist by whatever.
What does that even mean? How do we stop people from being racist? What are you talking about? Like what is the proposal? What is the plan that we'll do so that people won't be racist anymore?
Dunking on the chuds.
Exactly. Yeah. And Robin DiAngelo seminars and everyone read Anti-Racist Baby. That's the agenda.
And watch the videos where they're dunking on the chuds, because if you watch the videos, then that makes them money.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And if you try to address like the structural obstacles in place, well, that's bad, because now you're doing class reductionism.
Exactly.
So if you actually try to address racial inequality, you're doing class reductionism. This stuff drives me nuts. But what I think the difference between you and I is that you're someone who believes that socialism is a cure to racism, and that's where you and I part ways.
No.
You don't think socialism's a cure to racism?
I mean, depends on what you mean by racism. I mean, obviously, racist behaviors and attitudes, obviously not. If we're talking about behaviors and attitudes, then obviously not. But then I never claim to be a person who's trying to, like, I'm not acting in opposition to behaviors and attitudes. I'm acting in opposition to the structures.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm in agreement with you about that. But I swear I've heard you say things along the lines of like racism is like false consciousness created by capitalism, and that socialism would remove that.
Well, it wouldn't. I'm not going to say like socialism comes in, everyone stops being racist the next day. That's not going to happen. What I'm saying is people will have a less of a motivation to be racist, because obviously racism doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't come from. People aren't racist because they look at like a black person and go, I hate that person. I mean, and that's something like Destiny would believe. Destiny has outright said this, that he believes that racism is like a natural thing.
I don't know if I agree with Destiny, but I do think that tribalism is something that's deeply ingrained in us, that like we tend to see, you know, like my brother before my neighbor before some foreigner. You know, I do think that type of thinking is like ingrained into us.
But the idea
I don't think
that,
it's social either. I think it's evolution.
No, I don't think because I mean like different skin colors and stuff is entirely a arbitrary thing. I mean, we see those like different skin colors as tribes because that's what we're told to see.
Yeah.
As.
Right. So racism is a modern manifestation of our ingrained tribalism is how I would say it.
I would disagree with that because we're influenced to believe that by people who, you know, seek to benefit from it. Like, it's not, as I say.
But do you think that tribal our tribalism is the result of like the ruling class conditioning us to believe that?
I think tribalism is a response to like a lack of resources. If there's not enough resources to go around, then you will sort yourself into tribes so that your tribe can get the resources.
Okay, see, this is like a terminating point I get to with like a lot of like Marxist theory, where it's like the solution to everything is a post-scarcity society. Well, yes, I agree. A post-scarcity society will solve all of our problems. Like, yeah, Star Trek's great. Let's be like that. But I don't think there's any disagreement with that. I think that all of the disagreements we have are just that we don't live in a post-scarcity society and won't for the foreseeable future, probably ever. And so this is the reality that we're dealt with. This is the reality we're dealt. So the question isn't how to have a harmonious, functional society in a post-scarcity society. The problem is to have a harmonious, just society now in the world that we actually have to deal with.
But that's impossible.
Well, I mean, I think having a perfect society is impossible, but I don't think that solving problems is impossible. And I think that if you believe that, I think that you're essentially a nihilist at that point. And are you saying that socialism is going to bring in a post-scarcity society? Because I don't see any evidence for that whatsoever.
I don't know if I could say it would be post-scarcity, but I mean, it would alleviate a lot of the problems. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. But I know that we can't just say, well, socialism's impossible, ergo, we just have to like team up with liberals to punish all the bad racists and all that.
Well, I think that would be a terrible solution as well.
Yeah. So
yeah, but I mean, it seems like you're willing to say like, harmony in a society of scarcity, that's impossible. But a socialism that will sort of mitigate some of the problems is fine. Well, then what if liberalism can mitigate some of the problems? I mean, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, okay, look, we can't solve every problem, but we can solve some of them. So what's the best way to do that? And I think some people are just sort of waving a magic wand of socialism at the problem. And I don't think that is actually, in many cases, a meaningful answer.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's like, what other options are there really?
Okay.
So I mean, I'm not going to sit here and complain. Claim I can solve all the problems. I just think this is the direction that we should be heading into.
Fair enough. I mean, that's kind of at the end of the day where we all are. You know, we're just sort of trying to flashlights in the darkness, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, it annoys me that we didn't get to talk about, like, the main thing I want to talk about was base and superstructure. We got to do this again, man, because I thought this was a good episode, a good talk. I knew we would have tons. I knew we were going to get this point because I knew you and I were going to have tons to talk about.
Yeah, it's been like 2.5 hours at this point, I think.
Yeah, and I edit these, so like I've got to go through and like listen to the whole thing before I can release it. Anyway, you got a book coming out, right? You want to plug your book?
Do I? I wish I did.
12 Rules for Life. Fooly Cooly's 12 Rules for Life. It's in bookstores everywhere. You can get it. It's gonna be whatever the British Barnes and Noble is. You can go down there, pick it up. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Fooly.
You say cheers.
It's the middle of the night where you are, so thank you.
Nice. 11:30.
Hip hip cheerio. Fish and chips, Lori, all the rest, man. Take care. Have a good night.
You too.